The Nintendo 64 released first in Japan of June 1996, later that year into North America, and finally to the rest of the world in March of 1997. There were only approximately 338 Nintendo 64 games that were officially released in the console's life cycle, namely a few famed titles such as Ocarina of Time, Super Mario 64, and Super Mario Kart 64. But my question is, what about the others? There are plenty of games outside of the Mario and the Zelda franchise that have helped establish the console's amazingness. So how easy or difficult is it going to be to talk about the Nintendo 64 game library without any Mario games and without any Zelda games? Personally, I think it's super easy, and today I'm going to be bringing you guys 7 N64 games that I feel are essential, and I'm pretty sure I can stand here and do this video with 20, maybe even 25 amazing Nintendo 64 games. But I've narrowed it down to 7. It was very difficult. Let's get into it. We're going to start off with Diddy Kong Racing. This was one of the rivals to Mario Kart 64 back in the day, and it takes that basic premise of a kart racing game but adds its own little twist. In the beginning, you get lunged into this world after you've selected your character, and at first you're like, well, where's the track? Where am I going to race? But you go to different doors, having to collect different amounts of balloons to be able to gain access to the doors, and behind each of the doors is a track. Very different themes. We've got like snow themes, we've got fire themes, we got on water themes. I couldn't get my words out then. And the game itself adds a lot of versatility beyond what we're used to in the likes of Mario Kart with just carts or bikes. Everything just is on the road on Mario Kart, and I'm not dissing it for anything, because I really do like the Mario Kart series, with Super Nintendo Mario Kart being my absolute favourite. But Diddy Kong Racing really did pull something special out of the bag back in the mid to late 90s, and I still love it today. In fact, a lot of you good people have requested that I stream it here on YouTube. Let me know if you're one of those people that actually want me to stream it. I have an NTSC copy. I love that game. I always floated to Diddy as my primary racer. I found he was quite cute, and I just found that Diddy himself had less of the spotlight, I think, back in any of the Nintendo consoles. We first saw Diddy obviously back with the Donkey Kong Country, as you had a little bit of a team combo with the high-fiving, switching backwards and forwards between Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong, and then he got his own franchise. It's worth pointing out as well that Diddy Kong Racing was also ported to the Nintendo DS. If you can get a copy, expect to pay between £15 and £20 for the Nintendo DS. But if you want to get a PAL copy, you can expect to pay a similar kind of price. I would say £15 to £20 is a reasonable price for a boxed copy of Diddy Kong Racing on the Nintendo 64. If you like bright colours, if you like awesome little worlds, if you like variety, not just in characters and worlds, but also in vehicles, Diddy Kong Racing is for you, and it is a damn shame that it never got a sequel. A sequel was started, and I did cover it in the Games You Never Knew series way back in 2014-2015, but it was canned at the last minute. Diddy Kong Racing is an absolute gem of a Nintendo 64 game, and it was hard to not have it on this list. Next up then, I'm dropping Banjo-Kazooie in the equation. This was very similar for me, just to kind of Mario 64 and its 3D platforming element, but I just found this so much more fruitful because it was a brand new IP back in the day, and you took the form of Banjo the bear with your Kazooie on the back, and you're navigating through levels, traversing lots of different dangers, traversing enemies, collecting puzzle pieces and music notes. The more you collect, you unlock different things to be able to progress. And this is another game similar to Diddy Kong Racing with many different worlds, lots of different variety to get your teeth sunk into. And I just found it so rewarding, and I took a bit of a leap of faith back in the day in buying it because I didn't know a great deal about it, but I'm really glad that I did, because it just opened up like a brand new era of gaming for me, and it still holds true by today's standards. You have to like, it kind of like, there were similarities for me. I used to love The Wizard of Oz, I still do, and The Witch used to scare me, and then there was this witch that reminded me very much of the scares of the witch in Wizard of Oz in Banjo-Kazooie. I had a lot of fun on it. It's aged pretty well by today's standards, I will say that. It's very, very cute in its sound design as well, and again, lots of nice variety in, like I said, the levels, the colour palette, the pacing of the game, the abilities of kind of being able to jump and then kind of float. Lots of cool stuff with Banjo-Kazooie. And I personally feel, and I'm making a comment that I might get roasted for here, but it doesn't get a great deal of press, Banjo-Kazooie, which is a shame because it's a phenomenal game. And I've just realised that I've mentioned two rare games, Diddy Kong Racing the first, and Banjo-Kazooie the second. There are non-rare games on this list, and we're going to continue with that now. Let's continue. Next up then is the classic 007 GoldenEye, one of the earlier Nintendo 64 games launched on the console back in the mid-90s. Set on the film, we take the role of Pierce Brosnan as our 007 Ego battles through the levels with different weapons. The enemies are very cookie cutter. You'll find that as you go through the levels, the enemies tend to be the same kind of cookie cutter faces and cookie cutter movements, uniforms, colours, etc. In many ways, the game is actually very, very bland in its colour design, which is a stark contrast from the likes of Diddy Kong Racing and Banjo-Kazooie. But nonetheless, this game does ooze charm. It is amazing from start to finish when you load it up and you see Bond walk into the main frame with the classic James Bond kind of shoots the camera, you know, a bit of blood falls. It really does ooze charm, and if you're a fan of the films, it's going to be hard to give this one a miss because it also has great co-op. You can play up to 4 players with this. It is a little bit difficult if you've got a small TV, admittedly, because the screen splits off into 4, but it's still really fantastic and you're just getting so much goodness from it. And in fact, I did stream it here on my channel and I forgot how difficult and tricky it was in many places. The game doesn't take no prisoners. You really do have to pay attention to detail. For example, where you need to, the level where you need to take a picture of the satellite, I completely ran past it, and then somebody on stream pointed out, you know, Gemma, you do need to take a picture of that. Obviously I ran back and I was like, oh yeah, the satellite. So do be careful when you go back through this because things are very easily missed. Like I said, you need a keen eye to detail. The game is fantastic, and I don't think the N64 would have been the N64 as we know it without the addition of this fantastic 007 title. Next up then is another game with arguably one of the best soundtracks from the Nintendo 64 era, and that is F-Zero. We're still waiting for an F-Zero sequel on the Wii U, the Switch, in fact pretty much every console since the GameCube, but it is really, really fun on the Nintendo 64 as well, and I love going back to this. I've always loved it since the Super Nintendo version, when you flipped the case in the store and you saw the comic book theme of kind of screenshots on the back. I think F-Zero is another one of those games that is at its strengths, at its core strengths within the co-op. It is fast, it is furious, and you do need a lot of skill, I will say that. It often kind of reminded me of popping Wipeout in the PlayStation 1 and kind of having that bouncy physics mechanic of racing around the corners. 9 times out of 10 I would crash, and I found that as well on F-Zero on the Nintendo 64, but nonetheless, it's a staple title, it is a must, and you have to buy it. We've just had the release of Doom Eternal on current generation gaming consoles, and if you were lucky enough to pre-order it, you would have snagged yourself a downloadable code for Doom 64. So we're going to talk about Doom 64 right now on the Nintendo 64. For many of you that are a fan of the classic Dooms, if you have not played Doom 64, I urge you to go and buy a copy on current gen consoles or relive the classic nostalgia on the Nintendo 64 because it feels just like Doom is meant to feel. It's got all of the classic enemies, it's got all of the classic weapons, it's got that really tricky level design, collecting key cards, moving from point A to B, from ledge to ground, from ground to ledge. You know, it really is Doom at its core, and I've said this in a previous recent video that I think Doom 64 is the last of the classic Dooms. I don't think anything released since then with the marginal relief of Doom Eternal, nothing's felt like Doom. Doom 3 felt completely different. Doom 2016 just didn't feel quite right in its balance. Doom 64 for me, I play that and I get the same vibes as what I did when I first played Doom and Doom 2 back on the PC in Gordon Harwoods in my hometown in the 90s. I really love the kind of dark to light transitions in some of the levels. You know, you can be in a complete dark, dank, horrible place with a few neon colours to guide the way, and then you're out in this huge pit fighting gargoyles and, you know, fighting imps, and I feel that the premise is very rich and very classic in Doom 64, and I love it. Unfortunately, the cable that I have to play with my HDMI cable on my N64 is very dark, so I won't be streaming Doom 64 from my N64, but I will be continuing to play Doom 64 on the PS4, lots of 4s in there. But hey, Doom 64, what are your thoughts on that? Let me know in those comment sections below, because I do read all your comments. My 7th game is a game that I don't feel gets enough press within the Nintendo 64 library of games. That is Killer Instinct. I really loved the way the camera angles kind of pan and shift slightly round rather than it be from side to side. I loved the way there was this kind of like mild rotation of the camera, giving the levels this amazing 2.5D effect. Another thing about the levels before we even get to the characters is there's lots of grounds. There's like a background, a mid-ground, a foreground, and everything just rotates as if it's kind of like a Mode 7-esque bit of 3D magic. So that for me, straight off the bat, the visuals, I think, is something that is one of the strong points of Killer Instinct. Obviously, this is a fighting game and combos are crucial to having fluid gameplay, kick-ass wins, and just really having a good time. And I think if you can learn the combos in Killer Instinct, you're in for an absolute ride of your life, because there's not many good fighting games on the Nintendo 64 outside of the likes of, say, Super Smash Bros, for example. And I think Killer Instinct does a good job in keeping that genre alive within that beautiful 64-bit period. I love the different varieties of fighters as well. Everybody looks different, everybody fights very differently, everybody seems really different, and that coupled in with a really nice level design and the camera angles, I think that this game is a win-win, and we definitely need to just have more conversation about Killer Instinct on the Nintendo 64. Have you played it? If not, you need to go buy it. You need to do it right now because you're going to have a ton of fun. Make sure you get your friends over for some awesome couch co-op. So I said the last one was the 7th game, but this is actually the 7th game. Wave Race 64. Talk about a fantastic game, or what? Fast racing game on your jet ski, bright popping colours, loads of different jumps, an amazing feel to this game with its physics again. Love the way the kind of jet skis glide along the water. The water itself looks really good, and that's apparent from very early on in the game. Even when you're kind of down to the title screen and you're seeing the water and you're thinking, wow, what is this? Never ever before have I said, I wish there was a good jet ski game. But when you play Wave Race 64, you actually realise that there's a huge gap in the market, even by today's standards, to have a very arcadey wave race type game come onto the current gen. I think there's a huge gap in the market for it. We're not getting it. So if there's any devs out there, any indie devs, pay attention. We all love Wave Race 64. Awesome soundtrack, and I'll say this, having watched some of Metal Jesus' videos, he demoed Wave Race 64 using the Ultra HDMI mod, and it looks stunning. It probably looks like one of the best Nintendo 64 games via that Ultra HDMI mod I have ever seen. The colours, the textures, the polygons, everything just looks so crisp and sharp. But even without that, the game still looks really good and it's aged well. So I think it's one of those very strong titles that I certainly love, and I know some of my loyal fans love because you've told me about it on live streams. The Nintendo 64 is a magical console, there's no denying that. It added so much value to my childhood and your childhood. Let's hope 2020 brings an announcement of a Nintendo 64 Mini. If not, at least we can still enjoy some of these awesome games on our original hardware. If you are new here, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and share this video to Twitter using Team24. I will retweet every single person that uses that hashtag when sharing this video. But for now, I'll see you in the next one. My name is Gemma. Take care. See you soon.